Great. It's 2 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. I want to welcome everyone to today's session. It's titled Growth Leadership in Times of Crisis. My name is Raymond Lee. I'm the CEO of Career Minds. We're a virtual outplacement company and the sponsor of today's event. Career Minds has been providing virtual outplacement services since 2008. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We do have a large group today, so everyone is in listen-only mode. There's two ways to communicate with our speaker today. First is the chat window, which most of you all have gotten comfortable with that already. We do encourage you to use the chat for comments or any responses or follow-up comments to questions that we pose to you throughout today's session. There is a separate Q&A link at the bottom of your screen, so please use that for any questions that you have. Allie Brown, she is on our team. She's a panelist today, and myself will be monitoring that Q&A link to to take a look at your questions, and we may pose those throughout the session, Rob, depending on if it's relevant to a slide, or we may save it at the end, and we'll be monitoring that. So I want to get right to introducing our guest for today. My guest is Dr. Rob Fazio. Rob is the managing partner at On Point Advising, specializing in global leadership and organizational success. His approach to advising combines original research on power, influence, conversations, and motivation, as well as over 20 years of consulting to elite performers. He's worked with executive teams and coached executives throughout organizations, including the C-suite, surgeons, and emerging leaders. Dr. Fazio has contributed to Forbes, NBC, New York Daily News, and CEO Magazine, just to name a few. His advice on navigating turbulent times in politics has been featured in the New York Times, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and other local networks. So just a few interesting facts about Rob. He's considered an expert on growth leadership during crisis. He's conducted original research on post-traumatic growth on families of 9/11. He's a business advisor that teaches growth leadership in times of crisis. He runs a nonprofit with free resources on how to navigate crisis. And he's also the author of a great book I read, Simple is the New Start. Rob resides in Philadelphia, close to where I live, with his family, and he's a great friend. And I'm truly grateful that Rob's spending his time with us this afternoon. So Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Raymond. Thanks for the intro. And Allie, thanks for being here as well. We've had a partnership for years, way back to when we were both on the board of the Society of Consulting Psychology, and always admired what you and Allie do. So, when the coronavirus crisis started happening a few weeks ago, when the United States started to get more up to speed with what's going on, I thought of Raymond and Allie right away. When I do these types of presentations, I like to be as real as possible, and I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about crisis leadership and helping people through trauma and adversity is that it helps me be grounded. It gives me energy, and it's really something I'm passionate about. And obviously right now with what's going on with our hospitals and them, about to be overwhelmed, I find it very valuable for me as well to be doing this. And I think I have some practical things to offer for you. So hoping we get some opportunity for dialogue as well. And that one of the first things that I want to do is just level set around, what a crisis is. So a little while ago, I was out, maybe 5 or so years ago, out in Hong Kong. I've gone to China many times, and there's a professor there, Dr. Sam Ho, at the University of Hong Kong, and we were both doing work around growth through adversity and post-traumatic growth, and we were talking about things, and I had to ask him. I asked him. I said, Dr. Ho, I keep hearing this idea of crisis in China is made up of two characters. One is heart and one's hearing, and it means a time of danger and a time of opportunity. And he verified that that's actually true. So the idea there for the Chinese symbol is that while it's a really difficult time for everyone, there's always opportunity in crisis. And my belief is that if you do the right things as a leader and as a person, you're going to be stronger and you're going to grow through this on the other end, not just as a person, but also with your businesses. And then what I didn't know, and I found recently, I was touching up on some things, is there's actually a Greek word called krisis, and you could see the definition there as far as, you know, that being a turning point that could end with opportunity or death. And I find that to be also a really important reminder of, you know, crisis is such a time where it can go either way. So I just want to reinforce that just like anything else in life or that we do, we have choices. And if we're intentional about our growth, we will be in a better place once we get through this. Growth leadership, the number one thing is it's a people first approach. And the first person it starts with is the leader. You're going to hear me say that in a few different ways throughout our conversation. But the most important thing is realizing that you have to take care of yourself in order to be strong and lead. That's critical to success. I see way too many leaders that are under so much pressure and they just figure, I'll get through this. Also, my conversations with some docs, you know, doctors are used to having all the facts. They're also used to acute crises, but not crises that are both acute and chronic. So for example, something that peaks and is really difficult, like someone coming in with a trauma, if there's a shooting or something, that's a peak crisis, right? But something like what we're talking about, this pandemic, is it's both acute and critical, and it's going to last for a long period of time. So we really need to prepare our leaders to be good at practicing self-care as we go through this. A couple weeks ago, I was thinking through a lot of this, and as you noticed, this is a combination with Career Minds, On Point Advising, and Hold the Door for Others. And Hold the Door is a nonprofit that I'm very involved in. With the whole approach is growth through adversity, and it came to front of mind to me that if we're going to get through this and be stronger, we have to do something about this anxiety curve. Everyone is anxious. Anxiety comes from lack of control, and we don't have control and we don't have certainty. So we need to do two things. One is decrease our levels of anxiety, and two is to focus on intentional growth and building our skills. And for anyone that's interested, you'll see on the bottom there, there are the 8 resources that we found in our research working with traumatic experiences on not only what buffers a crisis, it also what leads to growth following a crisis. So that's what we really want to be focusing on is what kind of, when we get through this, how are we going to be on the other end? Another point on this is, as Raymond mentioned, you know, simple is part of what I do. I feel like if something isn't appetizing, meaning it engages people, isn't digestible, easy to understand, and memorable, it doesn't get used. So I really like to focus on things that can be applied right away. So this is just one simple approach where we're asking people to take 15 minutes a day and doing one of these 3 things, either learn, laughing, or love. So I do this with my 4-year-old daughter. We take time out each day and we try to make it a point to do this. Our minds need a break. The media is really good and really helpful. The media also is very good at creating traumatic stories. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to be seeing pictures of old people, young people with different difficulties in the hospital. It is going to continue to wear on us, and we have to take ownership for keeping ourselves strong, and our minds need a break from just the focus on crisis. So some typical responses that we have to crisis, your classic things: fear, denial, frustration, breakdowns in communication. It's important to realize that we are all going to experience a range of emotions, and that's okay. And just keep in mind that all emotions are like the weather. All emotions come and go. There hasn't been a storm in the history of the world that stayed 24/7. So the storm's going to pass, feelings pass, both good and bad. So just have confidence that your feelings are going to change and pass. And don't try not to let you, or if you're consulting the leaders, let the emotion be the only fact. That's just one feeling and one experience. It's important to validate it, but don't let that be your primary decision maker. So Rami, maybe we could do here is we'll take a look at the chat window here, and let's just see where people are right now in relation to what mistakes do they see leaders making right now during this crisis. And I'll glance down and take a look at my other monitor to try to look at them, and Raymond will help me out as well.
Yeah, I'll be monitoring that chat as well. And I have to tell you, Rob, one thing that I do is, everyone's working from home. I'm in my home office today, and I'll take a little snippet of the news in the morning just to sort of check in, but then I unplug, and then I'll come back to watch the evening news at 6:30 and, have dinner, and then just sort of check in again. So I find that for me, it just, like just turning that off and then just focusing on work does reduce my anxiety levels. Because you're right, if you sit there and watch it like throughout the whole day, it just really gets me anxious.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And right. So, I'm quote unquote trained, in anxiety and all different types of anxiety disorders. It still weighs on us. So just having that break and hitting that reset button. However, it needs to be something active. So watching Netflix isn't enough. It's got to be something where you're exercising, moving around, laughing.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, I'm just going to share some common themes that I'm just scrolling through here. I see
Great.
a lot around communication. I see some with, not enough company-wide communication to employees. I think, leaders are sort of going quiet in some cases or slow to communicate. But then I've seen on the flip side of this that over communication, but silence, not being communicative to employees seems to be a common theme, but others around blaming others, unprepared, are some of the responses that we're seeing.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, to the extent it's possible, try to give people a break and realize we are in uncertain times where they don't know exactly what to do. But yes, communication is always a big one. So think about it this way. Whatever was important from a leadership perspective before this is magnified. Mm-hmm. And those behaviors become so critical and important. And the other thing is, because there's such a lack of certainty and there's high pressure, people go back to their default to what they know. So I see a lot of people making mistakes where they're just talking about profit and businesses and missing the people side. And that's a recipe for disaster. Of course, we have to make our businesses sustainable, but you've got to be intentional about the people first side.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. I will continue here. So some of the things that typically go wrong, some of them were mentioned. A lot of what I see is that common sense becomes less common because of the emotion that's going on. And so people get their messaging wrong. Also, a lot of people, there's no playbook for this crisis that we're in right now. We can look back to other crises, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's no time frame. So it's very hard to predict things. And a lot of times, unfortunately, common sense goes out the window. So if you're a leader, what you could do is have someone around you to remind you to stick to the basics that are important, making sure that you go back to the values of the company And if you're not a leader and you're advising leaders, be courageous to give truth to power and help them see things they may not be seeing. A lot of it isn't intentional. I think for the most part, human beings are good people. It's just we get caught up in our own heads and self-absorbed around what our pressures are. So that's a lot. So some of the comparisons here. So many of us has probably seen and done what's the difference between management and leadership. Growth leadership takes it another step forward, which is it's really much more proactive, and we're focusing on building people up so that when they get through this, they're going to have more awareness, they're going to have more strength, more resilience, and the business should also grow. There's some different studies looking at companies after 9/11 and the ones that practice certain things like maintaining a purpose and values and reinforce that, their profit actually went up after a few months. So those both are important, the business side as well as the people side. The other point I want to make is the growth leadership stuff is like insurance. No one wants to dedicate time to focus on leadership in crisis, but when there's a crisis, they really want it. So right now we have a peak desire and interest in this crisis leadership topic. I would encourage you, once this is over, become your own expert in the area, because we're going to need it again. And if you have these skills, the next crisis will have less of an impact on you. So where to start? So there's 4 areas that there are. I'll explain to you why I have 3A and 3B there. So as I said, starting with yourself, making sure that you're building your strength, doing things to make sure that you're in a good place. Then your team, taking care of your team, building your team, ensuring that they're okay, getting what they need, giving them some ownership. That leads then into your business sustainability, people rallying around the business, and then as well as the social side of it. So doing things related to environmental, social, and governance, or so to speak, ESG score there, but also doing just what's right. The best question you could ask yourself if you're not sure what to do, say, if this showed up in the headline of a newspaper, how would it look, right? So that kind of headline thing, and asking yourself, is this the right thing to do? Not because you're going to do that, that you want to intentionally just benefit your business, but you get both. They work in parallel. So if you're doing what's right, that tends to also help your business in the future. Not in the short term, but definitely in the long term. And the reason that I have 3A and 3B there is you do need to have business sustainability and stay afloat in order to do the social stuff. So you've got to do those both at the same time. Some guiding principles for us: ensure that handling the crisis doesn't become the crisis. So you want to minimize your mistakes, and you want to do things that you making sure that you have a good, I would say, bullpen or a good advisory group of people. And your criteria for that is, are they credible? Are they competent? And are they candid? So you don't want just people that are yesers to you. You want people that are going to disagree and have some competence in the area that you're working on. Lead yourself before you lead others. Same thing, that I was talking about with it starts with you as the leader. And this is for people that might be an executive that are communicating externally. So many times executives make the mistake of sending a message and doing a PR campaign, but not letting people within the organization know. So just make sure if there's a message going outward, it goes inward first. Today's age with social media, people get very emotional, sometimes rightfully so, and your glass door will blow up with any mistakes you make there. Your behavior defines the brand going forward. So staying consistent to your values, making sure that you're intentional about what you're doing. I already mentioned this point around the idea of growth leadership being important regardless. Feel slow, think fast. This goes to some of the stuff around, being the master of your own domain, realizing that emotions are going to be coming quickly. We're all going to have associations of things, taking a step back, integrating your thinking and your feeling. Stockpiling positive experience for yourself and the people around you. Anxiety is contagious, and so is positive emotion. Laughter, right? Enjoyment, learning something, doing things that you stockpile. So these positive experiences become our N95 masks, right? We know we're going into a crisis. This gives us some protection from the anxiety that's out there. Be fact-based, not just fear-based. So there's some great leadership examples going around. Andrew Cuomo is doing a great job. However, one of the things that he can improve on, he's the governor of New York for people that are near and far. And his approach is he has calm confidence. He does a good job. What he is doing, though, is instilling too much fear with his facts. So you have to balance your fear-based facts with your positive facts as far as, recovery rate and things like that. Realizing that in a crisis, the first decision is not necessarily the best decision. Because we try to relieve our anxiety so quickly in a crisis, oftentimes people stop at the first decision and then they don't consider other options. So you want to widen your options. You give yourself a certain amount of time before you have to make a decision, and then you widen them. And then building people's confidence in the short term so they can perform, giving them ownership. Do the accountability things afterwards. Right now, it's about helping people perform. And if something didn't go right, you could always circle back after the crisis is stabilized.
Hey, Rob, can I ask a question related to that last slide, just really quickly? When I think about, when you're looking at this one with the decision not always being the best decision.
Yes.
It seems like there's an incredible amount of pressure on companies to make decisions about their employees. When you're seeing other companies announcing furloughs or making big decisions like that, I would imagine leaders see that and want to react in a way that's maybe similar because that's what other companies are doing, but it may not necessarily be the right thing for their business. So how do you coach a leader to be thoughtful and not be swayed by what's reported in the media as what other companies are doing, and really look at your own company and make business decisions on? So that's something that just struck me when you said that.
It's an excellent point. So I think that people get caught up in the mindset of saying she or he moved quickly and was decisive. Not always the best strategy. I personally am seeing an overreaction of layoffs too soon. Within the first day of people saying we've got 15 days of quarantine, some clients and friends were laying people off. And I said, why? And they said, well, we're not going to be able to sustain this. So now what's really interesting is now with the CARE Act and PPP, which is payroll protection, people are able to get a forgivable loan up to 2.5 times what their salary is, up to $100,000 for an employee. That's changing every day, by the way. So you've got to check that at the CARE Act to verify what's happening now. But my point is, if people did layoffs in the first week and the PPP says, well, you can't get the funding if you did layoffs, right? Now you've got to go back and hire those people again. So to your point, I think that people do tend to move too quickly. And if you're able to give some time or at least see what's going to be out there, what you can do. I was a little surprised that companies, and again, everyone's got a different situation, but within the first, week, we're doing a massive layoffs. I heard one company that laid off 70% of their employees in the first week. So to your point, everyone's got to look at their business differently. Everyone's business is is different. Just a couple things to talk about here. So whether you're an executive or you're in human resources or you're a leader, we're going to have more than one crisis in our lifetime. This process is something to follow. So see wide, collect as much information as you can. That'll help you from making bad decisions early on. Let people disagree, reserve the instinct to go with their first decision. Hit the pause button on your feelings, take a step back and write them down, what you're feeling, why you're feeling, and then go back to those feelings. Feelings are a data point, not the data point. And then thinking fast. So what are your strategies? What things can you do? And acting confidently. You can be uncertain and confident at the same time. So something like, I know we're going to get through this in one shape or form. I don't know exactly what that looks like. From what we know, here are our best 3 things that we're going to be doing as a company. I want you there with me. Let's continue to have that dialogue. I'll update you tomorrow or in a week, but doing that in a confident manner where you're trying to have some clarity. Whatever you do, do not overstate things and do not say things if you do not know that they're factual. Also, separate fact from opinion. You say, here's what we know, and then here's what we think. So a lot of people have been asking me in these times and situations, how do we know who to listen to? Because there's so much different information, it gets political. We all have different views. If you want my advice on it, which I've been getting asked a lot, I've got a very simple strategy for you. It goes Dr. Fauci, everybody else. Fauci first. You listen to him, and then you listen to everybody else. He has been brilliant at being fact-based, having an interdisciplinary team, not getting political, and giving you as much information. He even admits mistakes. So I think he right now, in my view, is the best resource, but you've got to make your own decisions on around who you follow and who you listen to. Okay, here's some tips for you, some keys. And so starting with yourself, those of you that are in the HR field, this will seem a lot familiar, but the reason why you want to know what energizes you and what drains you is you're going to be going through waves of anxiety as well as being tired. No one is immune to fatigue. Many of us are working as we're watching children. I was on a call the other day and my daughter said, I was talking to one of my clients and my daughter goes, hey, Daddy, can you talk to your friend a little bit lower? It's really noisy. So, realizing we're all kind of jumbling multiple things is important. Knowing what your triggers are, practicing active stress management, and having some enjoyment and passion. For each of these areas, there's a guide and a question to ask yourself around what you want to do. I should also mention that while I'm not going to be sharing all the slides, Raymond and Allie have arranged where we will be recording this, so you could watch that. Also, slides like this you could find on my website as well. And I'm sure Career Minds will have some stuff as well.
And Rob,
yes,
I have a
sure.
great question that just came in. Do you have suggestions for how a leader can recover from when their initial reaction might not have been as they desired?
Yes. The best way to recover is to just make it clear that you made a misstep, you apologize. After looking at it, you rethought it, and it's just like anything else. If you demonstrate vulnerability along with confidence, people will go along with you. And you could even say, I had a lot coming at me once. Whatever it is, be honest about it. The worst thing you can do is ignore it or not be open to that conversation. We're all going to make mistakes. If you look at it, even our Surgeon General is now admitting he may have made a mistake. In the beginning, he said, stop buying N95 masks and they don't help the general public. Now it's coming out some things in China. He's asked the CDC to look at that again. So my point is, you don't be arrogant. You say you made a mistake, you look at it again. Raymond, does that speak to that question?
Absolutely, I think so. And I have to echo the challenge that you had with your daughter, because I had the same challenge with my son, who kept walking in my office while I'm on conference calls. Even when I had the Post-it note outside my door that said I'm on a conference call. But
right.
Anyway, yeah, I think that covered it. Thank you.
Yeah. I know. I am not following my guidelines on screen time lately. I have to admit that. So communicate with a selective style. I've been asking people which style they think is most important, and truly you want to be able to have as many styles, but I think most people feel like the calm confidence style is really critical. People tend to follow that subtle strength where people are speaking in a confident manner, and you can have some emotion in there, but you want to have that composure and calm. People need that reassurance that there's someone leading them towards a direction. And then tailoring to motivational currency. So, excuse me, we all have different motivators inside of us, and under pressure and stress, we go back to what our primary motivators are. So if I'm very performance focused, which is results and getting things done, pressure goes up, I'm going to key in on stock price or business results. And because I think that's what's most important, and I think that's what you need. But what people may need is for you to say, hey, what we're going to do for the first 3 months is make sure everyone has free counseling services or something that is people oriented. So my point here is make sure you're tapping into all of the 4 of those motivational currencies. This work comes from the late Harvard psychologist David McCullen's social motives theory. So if you're interested in more of that, there's a lot out there on that as well. And then the going for growth. So after September 11th, people kept saying, why don't you do something on, a scholarship or helping people cope with crisis? I don't know what it is about my personality, but coping for me isn't good enough. I want you and your people to have grown in some way, shape, or form as a result of this crisis. So that's on you to figure out who can help you with this and how you can help yourself, and do that for your people and for your business. And then some other tips. So on these, this is an acronym for what to do. Safety is the first thing. So both safety for employees. I just heard from someone that they're sending out a memo. One part of the country, people are still going to the office, and they're telling the other side of the country that you shouldn't be home. We want you to go back to work. Not good. So ensuring the safety of your people. And then there's psychological safety. Can people speak up? Can they ask questions? Can they give advice? Again, in a time where we don't have much control, giving people some sense of control is really important. And then the people first, right? Communicating, connecting with people emotionally, that's critical. Emotional intelligence, become a student of emotional intelligence, connecting insight into influence, being self-aware, being able to adapt, articulating your vision for the future of the business. Guess what? I keep talking about people first. People also want to hear, what are we going to do in the business? People are starting to ask me about reintegration and how we're going to be dealing and handling that. So I'm starting to think that through. We're going to have a different landscape. Business models and frameworks are going to have a change based on what we're doing. Businesses are learning a lot, and we've been kind of forced into innovation in this 3-week period now. So there could be a lot of positives to go through that. So think through your business and how can this be a competitive advantage to you? Knowledge, become an expert on leadership and instilling confidence in others. And then evaluation. right? Getting feedback from people, making sure intentions matching impact, and getting feedback from people that are decision makers and then aren't decision makers. Consulting with experts, and then the last piece is sacrifice. So if you're a leader, let's say you're an executive, the first two S's are the most important: safety, and then the last S, sacrifice. Too many organizations make the mistake of not realizing what people are going through and won't give anything up. So the businesses that say, you know what, you're going to have to work from home, and I'm going to need to see that you're logged on to your computer from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I'm going to check your camera. Like, that's not good. Give people a little bit of freedom. And even if you're not the executive, if you're a leader, right, realize that giving something up, giving some type of sacrifice is going to be really helpful for people.
Rob, we had
some good one. Sure.
and we had a question here I'm going to throw out there.
Please.
So how do you make your staff feel assured when you are furloughing some employees? And then there was a second follow-up to that, a separate question. But how do you make your staff feel assured when you are furloughing some employees? You have any suggestions?
I do. I have two answers to that. One is that there are no guarantees. So whether there's a crisis or not, there's no guarantees. I think what you need to do is be honest, put on the table what you know. I think you need to say, with all good intentions, here's what I'm trying to do. I can't promise you anything. I'm going to work my hardest to make A, B, and C happen. And then I think that, maybe you offer something and say, if there are volunteers that want to take a leave or something like that, I would also advise people, listen, most businesses took a really big hit right now. We're all in this crisis together. So I think saying, we're going to try to treat you as well as possible. I can't guarantee everything, but I also invite you during this time to, if you want to pursue other opportunities, I will support you in that. And then hopefully when we get back on our feet, we can come back. Or I think you need to be honest. The other thing is, in 2008, in that downturn, I wrote a quick article on leadership during layoffs, which is on my website. So you could check that out as well. That has some tips.
Great. And then just a quick comment on see the situation. They may have missed that in the previous. Did you touch on that bit in your last slide? See the situation?
Yes, that was over here. That one? Or is that a different one?
Yeah, I'm just not sure. Someone had posted.
Oh, here you go. Here's see the situation. I mean,
yeah.
Was there a question about that?
No, I think they just, it just basically just asking what that was. So just quickly commenting, I hate to backtrack here, but I'm just trying to address everyone's questions.
No worries. Sometimes we got to go back to go forward, right? So see the situation is about understanding the state of the business, what the priorities are, both in the short term and the long term, kind of a little bit of a needs assessment. What is the impact on the people right now and what do they need? And then getting real with yourself around what you can control and can't control. Mm-hmm. And these are the guiding questions around that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Now I just want to take a couple minutes on the how of building and growing for yourself and others. So there are 8 resources that I mentioned that we found. For those of you that are more academic in nature, we do have a couple of the journal articles and book chapters on this approach and where we found this in the research. But these are the 8 resources that have definitions to them and skill sets. We also, on the nonprofit side, have something called a growth guide, where people can take a self-awareness tool. It tells you where your strengths are and weaknesses in these areas, and then tells you how to grow in those areas. The second part of this is, I boiled down all of my training in psychology and crisis and trauma to these 3 words. When I'm working with someone and I want to get them through a tough time, Connect, Care, and Challenge. I use this in coaching, everything. And essentially, connect is finding common ground, understanding the person. Care is showing you're on the same team and demonstrating empathy. And then challenge is that step forward. What are they doing to grow? So you apply this to yourself, self-connect, self-care, self-challenge. And when you're working with others, you use these 3 C's to try to build these resources in others. So there's different tips and strategies on how to do that on the nonprofit website there. And then just a couple of things that we learned from the families 9/11. This research was done back in 2004-5. And not surprising, the most important thing was social support. So as we distance socially, we need to intentionally connect emotionally. So that social support, you may be doing okay, but others may not. And also, a lot of people aren't good demonstrating vulnerability. A lot of our docs are really scared now. They're used to having so much information they don't have. So if you have a friend that's a doc or a nurse or a staff member in a hospital, reach out, see how they're doing. I call it taking the anxiety temperature, right? Trying to just be a friend and supportive, and support them. Most challenging aspects, the suddenness of experiences. So while we saw what's going on in China, this was still pretty sudden. There's a great book called Shattered Assumptions by a woman named Janoff Ballman that talks about how we just go through life thinking we're invincible and nothing will happen to us. So this hit us by storm. We didn't think we'd be, not able to see our loved ones and friends for this period of time. And then was really big. Anything good that came out was their personal growth. So positive, greater self-reliance, independence, resiliency. And then also what they can offer others is, that reaching out to support others, as we were just talking about. So I'm gonna pause here and turn it over to Raymond so we could do some Q&A, and hopefully answer some of your questions. There's a bunch of different resources that are out there. If you'd like that, you can Google or take a look at. I'll post a bunch on my site as well.
Yeah, so if anyone else has any questions that you want to post in the Q&A, please do so, and we'll take a look at that. And while you're thinking about other questions that you have, I have to tell you, Rob, that slide that you mentioned, the Connect, Care, and Challenge, I had my send-off comments here, and I feel like you did a fantastic job of just connecting with the several hundred people that we have on this webinar this afternoon. Just being human and being present and visible to everyone, takes a lot of courage. So we certainly appreciate that. You took good care, recognizing that we all have our own personal needs and struggles, and you challenged our thinking. And so thank you for that. And we do have a anonymous person who is asking, how long do you think this crisis will continue? They're looking for your expert opinion, I guess. And, I'm glad that you put it to Fauci and not Fazio. So thank you for that. But do you have an opinion? I mean, there's a couple of other questions here on tips, but
Sure.
This was the one, yeah.
Like every good Italian, I have an opinion, and it's a strong one. However, let me preface this by, I am not a medical doctor. I am a psychologist, and I would go to Fauci and the CDC. What I can tell you, from what I understand from doctors that I've spoken with, again, this is my opinion, and so verify this for yourself, that we should see a spike in the next 2 to 3 weeks. New York City's getting hit right now, but we saw Seattle decrease in some of the cases. When I talked to some docs, they said, let's look to China and see. The difference between us and South Korea is we weren't able to track, so we're taking a different strategy of social distancing. All that being said, from maybe a couple weeks ago, a 3-month time period to when we're probably back up and running to whatever normal is. But my guess is that if they figure out some stuff around when they're talking about antibodies and stuff, my hope not fact. My hope is, you know, in a month or so, we'll start seeing some of this kind of declining, and maybe in a couple of months. So I don't know. I don't want to instill fear because I don't have, you know, the medical background to talk about that. On the psychological side, this is going to be with us for a while. And so it's a constant reminder of stockpiling growth and strength and positive experiences and reaching out to help others.
Great response. And someone actually did comment in that they said they are going to steal your comment about like every good Italian. So that's great. They at least got one tip in today's session.
There you go.
Erica is asking, do you have tips on how we can feel connected and more strengthened when we're so far apart? They're using Zoom meetings and using that platform, but they still feel very distant. Any tips on connecting?
Yes. So let me do a couple things. One is, simple answer is we're starting something on the nonprofit side called Growth Conversations. So on April 2nd, we're at 5 o'clock Eastern. We're doing basically something similar to this, except focused on growth, giving some tips and then having some dialogue around that. So community. I think that what's important is to tailor the experience to yourself. So for me, I enjoy this. I wish I had you all on a screen and I could see you and we could have dialogue, but pursuing what is best for you. So you might be able to create a community with a few people where you're having chats and conversations. I like this whole idea of making a laugh list. So people that you enjoy and make you laugh, and, you know, half hour a week or something, connecting with them and having conversations. I don't know, it'd also be good too to have people write in the chats other suggestions that they may have.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And Kyla is asking, what one piece of advice do you believe leaders can do to help associates get through this? You've talked about a lot here today, but if you're going to just, you know, reinforce one piece that you think our community that are on this call here today can advise their leaders to help associates get through this, what would it be?
What you can control is flattening the anxiety curve and increasing your growth curve. So that's step one. Whatever you need to do, become an expert on lowering your stress level and become an expert on strengthening something. Another thing around community and in relation to what you just asked is create a strength sharing, right? Know what you're really good at and teach other people that. That creates positive emotions and has emotion contagion in a positive perspective.
Great. This is such a great question, and I think applies to all of us. And I've seen this just within our company, that the introverts they're loving this isolation. They're the social distancing. The introverts are loving it. They're in their home office, but it's the extroverts that are struggling. And so, how do you support extroverts who are really struggling during a social isolation period?
Yeah, you know, I've heard that. It's been funny watching the news and people talking about that. First, I actually think that people aren't just an introvert or extrovert. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think we have aspects of both.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that are having a tough time because they're not connecting with others, it goes back to intentionally creating those instances in any way you can. So I am more intentional now, whereas I used to just pick up the phone and call someone. Sorry to all your introverts who hate when I do that. I will send a note the day ahead of time, and I'll try to schedule time with them to make sure I get that need met. That's what I do. To try to do that. Also, you know, extroverts or people who enjoy having an impact or influence, just start writing, you know, things that you think would be helpful to others, right? Create a PowerPoint deck or something like that and just share, here's what I think is helpful. I think that's supportive as well for people that feel like they're not connecting enough.
Yeah. If I can just share some comments that people, you asked them to comment.
Yeah. Yes.
Katarina is saying they hold weekly team virtual huddles, 30 minutes, where they talk about everything but work, and that's in an exclamation point.
Yeah.
Nancy says Zoom meetings, but don't have to be about work. I'm seeing, Jennifer saying online happy hours, conference call bingo. Someone even, Carrie said, holding bracket tournaments where there's just, quick fun things to do that are part of the day. These are things that you really have to be creative and put as part of your daily practice. So things aren't going to just happen, right?
Absolutely. It goes back to intentionality, and we get caught up in the grind of the day, but being intentional about those things. And the biggest rule is make sure you know what you enjoy. So a lot of people, it's just like the classic thing, like the boss says, let's go out for happy hour, right? She invites everyone, but 6 of the 8 people don't drink and don't like to get together socially and really would rather get home and hang out with their kids. So just being aware of what is important. Maybe one suggestion is, if you have a team, each week, one team member picks something that they think would be fun for the team or engaging, and then you rotate.
That's great. Virtual scavenger hunt, Sunday night family game night. There's a silver lining to all of this that, we get more time with our family. And whether it's kids that are home from college or little ones, I know that the homeschooling is probably very stressful for people, but people are sharing a lot of great ideas here around, having social hours and collaborating on ideas with the team.
Yeah.
So any other questions? We do have, 5 more minutes, and Rob, appreciate you providing this time at the end where people can, just share what they're thinking. A lot of times just sharing what's on your mind, and your sharing sometimes makes you feel better about, your situation. So thanks for giving us that time to do that.
Yeah, I think it's important because more times than not, with the community or the group, advice they have, experience they have is much more valuable, and it's because what people are really struggling with. So I encourage that.
Absolutely. And just as a reminder, I know Allie had posted this a few times. We are recording this session, and there will be an email that's going to go out. Rob, do you have a closing slide that has your contact information? I know Rob is active on LinkedIn, so he has lots of content he's sharing on LinkedIn. His website is onpointadvising.com, all one word. We're not going to be providing the content. However, on Rob's website, much of the graphs and things that you've seen in today's presentation is on his website. Holdthedoor.com is just a fantastic nonprofit that Rob started years ago that has a lot of support materials. And and so we are going to be sending out the recording. You'll get an email later this week with that. We are hosting webinars every Thursday at 2:00. Next Thursday, we are going to be presenting best practices to conducting a virtual layoff. We've seen some things recently in the media about some mishaps that companies have made. So we're going to share some resources with you. We'll have an attorney on that webinar, so you'll get an email with that as well. So Rob, I think we had one more advice, and this could be our send-off. Advice or resource for a company with hourly factory workers that do not have access to company email, address, computer, etc. What are your thoughts around that? And we'll make that our last question for the session.
That's a good question. I actually don't have expertise in that area. I wish I do. I wish I knew more. Any way the company can connect with them. So if it's got to be, regular mail, even just a postcard, saying that we're, thinking during this time, and maybe giving them a couple of tips, something like that, where they can be connected in some way, or contact one of these big companies and see if they can somehow donate, a laptop or a computer or something, or help them get Wi-Fi. I know Comcast and Cisco, they've been really doing a lot, and Google. That's what I would do. I would try to advocate to see, and maybe it's not going to happen right now, but if they get a note saying, you know what, we contacted company X, they're willing to help, at some point they're going to be getting you connected. So this crisis has been terrible, but we're going to make sure you're connected for the next time over. Something like that. Even if you're only able to do it for 1, 2, 3 people, but that story goes out there, other people feel positive about that.
Rob, and Gina just sent a note here. This is a great idea. They use an 800 number for employees to call in for updates from leadership. And you can just call in anytime and get updates from the company on things that are going on. That's a fantastic idea if you have that capability.
That's very practical. And you can still set up, through a lot of these applications, a group conversation just via phone, right? It doesn't have to be a video chat. So the other thing too, Raymond, I made me think of something. So we actually, for the nonprofit, we started 2 hashtags, #learn, laugh, and love, and #flatten the anxiety curve. And what we're trying to do is create a positive social movement. So, when you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you do, we're overwhelmed with so much negative news. So I've been posting, videos. My daughter, who's 4, used to take a gymnastics class that she loved. So now she tries to teach me how to do like a cartwheel or a handstand. I have a lot of growth to go in that area, but it's funny, right? And it's enjoyable. It doesn't have to be anything major, but that's a great way that you, if you want to, can help this movement as well.
Great. And that's #laugh. Is it laugh, love, live?
#learn.
Oh, learn.
Laugh, learn, #learn, laugh, love, or #flatten the anxiety curve.
That's a long one. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick
there's
with
there's plenty of room out there digitally, Raymond. There's plenty of room.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. So I just want to again say, Rob, thank you for your generous time. Thanks for being human. Connect, care, and challenge your leaders, your team, and we'll be sending all of this content, this recording out to you all later this week. So be on the lookout for that. And, hang in there. We're going to get through this together. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Raymond and Allie, for having me, and for all of you out there, one growth step at a time. I look forward to seeing you on the other end.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.